Hi, everyone. Welcome to another show of Execution Matters in B2B marketing. Today, I've got Mr. Jeremy here, who is the founder and CEO of Conversa, a digital content agency that helps you to create 1 month worth of content in just 60 minutes. So, before we jump on the podcast and ask you the question, shall we talk about your company, Conversa, in just some 2 minutes, Jeremy?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say a few words. So we do two things. For the past few years, we've really been focused on podcast production for B2B companies, so branded podcasting. Uh, but more recently, we have rolled out something called the Interview Engine. And that's how we help you create a month's worth of content in 60 minutes. And the idea is really, really simple. It's for anyone who's maybe struggling with creating content, someone who wants to be posting on LinkedIn more than they already are, let's say several times a week, and that just gets to be a grind. They find that they dread it and it's just a chore. So the service that we offer is once a month, we'll get together, we'll interview you about anything you want to talk about, anything that's relevant to your audience and we'll interview you for about an hour. And then we'll turn that material into as much content as you need, into short video clips specifically. Any other kind of content if you want written content. But the main thing is short video clips. And from an hour interview, we can create enough for at least a month and even more than that, depending on how much you want. But that's it. And so it just takes all that off your plate. And what I think is cool about it is that it's still you in your own words. It's just that it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to show up and talk than it is to sit down and write, stare at the blank screen and create something from scratch. That can get really burdensome. But showing up and having a conversation once a month, that's easy. That's fun. So that's what we
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. Because that's a great service, because the content production is really challenging for anyone, right? And as you said, opening up a LinkedIn, typing a content, publishing it, like it's like a daily task for a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So you said you booking the people with the CXOs, the subject matter experts, and blocking 1 hour of their time there, then recording the entire conversation, the plan the questions in advance. I would say that's a great stuff, and that is so unique there. I mean, like it really reduces the time limit from their end, and you're getting a lot of content, and obviously the short form videos, and that is on the rise like anything, whether it's YouTube or LinkedIn, Instagram. The short clips are always on the rise. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Good to know
Yeah.
about
Well,
that.
thank you. Thank you.
So before we said like yesterday, like the art of interview, right? The CXOs
Yeah.
and the subject matter experts. So we have mentioned that in our previous discussion. So could you please dive deeper into this concept? So what sets apart interviewing for thought leadership content from other types of other normal interviews?
In many ways, it's not that different, right? It's the same basic process
Yeah.
of you in some way, and I'll complicate this in a minute. It's as easy as you decide together with the person you're going to interview, what's the topic? What are we going to talk about? You come up with a list of questions and then you engage in a discussion, right? I think it's not much different whether it's thought leadership or it's somebody talking about a product or about the value they offer or whatever. you know? And there's all different kinds of thought leadership too. On the other hand, I think there are some differences. Um, let's say I think there's quite a bit of a difference, say, if you're a journalist
Mm.
and interviewing a source for a story. There, your only agenda is just to gather facts and
Yeah.
get the person's thoughts and feelings about those facts, kind of about what happened. And your only agenda there is to report on what happened and then let your readers know. Um, for thought leadership in a marketing context, and let's say that usually applies to a B2B marketing context, right? That's a marketing piece. The goal there is to create a piece of content that's going to serve a marketing purpose. Maybe
Yeah.
it's sales enablement. In one way or another, it's meant to attract your audience and to earn their trust so that along the way on their buying journey, right, it plays at least some role in getting them to know you, to trust you, so that when they're ready to buy, you're top of mind, right? So you go into an interview to, with, say, a thought leader to create thought leadership content with that end goal in mind. And so the way that kind of affects everything. It affects the questions you ask,
Yeah.
how you engage in the discussion. Um, it's much more of a collaboration with the person that you're
True.
interviewing rather
True.
than just treating them as a source of information that you're getting information from. So that's one way in which it's different.
Yeah, so true. I think one more aspect I would like to add that is, we are not only doing for them, we are doing for their ideal clients, because a lot of people will be
Yes.
watching their content, right? So we have to think about the problems that he wants to solve for his ideal customers. So definitely that a lot of research will be involved there. Then we'll be asking questions based on that. So it is not certainly based upon that guy, it's based upon his ideal clients. Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? You and for any content creator, right? You always have to have the audience in mind. First and foremost in mind if you're going to create good content, right? It needs to speak to what's going to engage them. Uh, and I think it's no different than and that applies if you're doing an interview with a thought leader, right? Creating thought leadership content for sure. The audience matters quite a bit because you could, depending on exactly who the audience is, you'll conduct the interview at least a little bit differently. You might
Yep.
ask different questions, or you might pitch it at a more basic level, or you might pitch it at a more complicated level where you're getting more into the weeds, right? So it really is crucial to know who is meant to consume this content.
Excellent, Jamie. So regarding the preparation process, right? Because before jumping on the interview, there'll be a phase like you have to prepare for the interview, right?
Yeah.
So when you're preparing for the interview, a founder or a subject matter expert, okay. So how do you ensure that the conversation will go beyond just the surface level topics? So are there any
Yeah.
specific research or pre-interview techniques that you have found, are particularly effective on that part?
Yeah, definitely. But first, I'll just agree with you and say that preparation, of course, is very important, but the details matter. So there are all kinds of different ways to do prep, and I can tell you how I do that. So,
Mhm.
and some of it is very basic, very obvious. So I think, of course, you want to learn within reason as much as you can about the person that you're going to interview.
Yeah.
And that's simple enough, right? You can go on LinkedIn and at the very least learn about basically who they are, what they do, their job history, and so on. Beyond that, it's also always a good idea to read some of their contents. If they've been posting on LinkedIn, you can get a sense of how they think, what they
Yep.
think about. Maybe they've been on some podcasts. You can listen to the
Mm.
interviews on podcasts. Maybe they've been interviewed and in print publications. So the more that you can learn about that person and how they think, the better. You get examples of what it might be like to interview them or the kinds of responses you're going to get if you ask certain questions. So that's one thing. And then I think it's crucial to also do a prep call with the person you're going to interview
Mm.
because the it's one thing to get a general sense of who they are just by reading their LinkedIn, but it's a
Yep.
whole other thing to actually meet them and have a conversation and to really and the purpose of that conversation is a few things. First, and let's say that you already have a topic in mind or together you've already agreed on a topic. Chances are it's going to be something that you could approach in any number of different ways from different angles.
Yep.
And so, given that you're going to have some limited amount of time for the interview, even if it's a long time, like an hour, right? Still, you want to, as quickly as possible in the actual interview, get right to the heart of what you're talking about, right? That's the best content. You don't want to eventually get to it. You just want to get there and then mine it, you know? And
Yep.
I think the only way to really know what the heart of it is and how to get there is beforehand to simply ask the person you're going to interview. Okay, here's our topic. Um, Tell me a little bit about what you think about this topic. Why is this interesting to you? Right?
So true.
What's your take on this? What are the three or four most important talking points that you want to make sure to hit? Right?
Yep.
And in these prep calls, you can very easily, without even knowing it, begin to get into the actual interview itself, which you don't really want to do because you want to save that for the interview.
Yep.
But there's
True.
always a little bit of overlap, and that's okay. I mean, often what'll happen is going to get the person you're going to talk to just start talking, and you can tell like they'll and you can tell they're very excited about the things they're saying, and that's a good clue. Oh, okay, this is what really gets them going.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And but again, you want to. Sometimes I have to stop them. I'm like, whoa, okay, let's not get too far. Let's save that good stuff for the interview. But that's really valuable.
Yeah.
You know, and all you have to do is ask. Just say, here's. You might even say, here's what I think is interesting about this topic, but it's not about me. It's about you and about the audience, like we were talking about before. And again, the prep calls is an opportunity to make sure the interviewee understands who the audience is,
Exactly. That's
right?
true.
Because that'll help them calibrate in their brain, like, okay, our topic is something technical, maybe, but it's aimed at an audience of non-experts. And so I'm going to need to get in that mode of explaining it to people who don't know what I know.
So
And
true.
that's your job as an interviewer to make sure they understand that and then to pitch the conversation at that level, right? Or conversely, no, you'll be talking to your colleagues on this podcast. And so we're going to get way down deep in the weeds and they'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Then I can assume a certain amount of knowledge and so on. So it's also to get them in the right mindset. And then
True.
lastly, I find a lot of people can be a little bit nervous or even a lot nervous at the
Mm.
prospect of being interviewed. I think it's a few things. I think a lot of people are excited at the prospect and flattered. But
Mm.
the closer it gets to the actual time of doing the interview, often when people show up, it can be a little nervous simply because, especially if they haven't done that kind of thing a
Yeah.
lot, it's just you're a little bit on the spot, or at least you can feel that way, and you want to do well. And you might be, well, what if I say the wrong thing, or I stumble over my words, or I lose my train of thought? So the
Yeah.
prep call is also an opportunity to calm those fears and to make sure people understand this will be recorded. It's not live unless it is live, and then that's a whole, and then obviously you want to let them know that. But if it's not, let's say it's like a podcast interview, or you're writing an article and you're just interviewing someone to kind of get their thoughts and get some quotes, just like, I'm recording this, we can take as much time as we need here, within the limit that we have. If you feel like you want to do an answer over, that's fine. I'll make you, don't worry, I will make you look good, I'll make you look great. you know and so
So
it's an
true.
opportunity to just make people feel comfortable, and then finally, in a kind of more general sense, to establish some rapport with the
Yeah.
person that you're going to be talking to, because I think that matters. It's to interview someone, kind of an intimate thing in a way. you know they they're in your hands, they're trusting you
Mm.
to make this a good experience and to not screw them, basically. And so that's a lot of responsibility, and it's your job as the interviewer to rise to that and take on the responsibility, and to establish a good relationship, so that when you actually sit down to the interview, the person you're talking to is comfortable, they're relaxed, they're ready to go, they know what you're going to talk about, they've been thinking about it a little bit, so they have lots of good ideas and things to share with you. And so you can accomplish all of that in about a 30-minute prep call if you do it the right way.
Excellent. I think it is really near. So if you're having a preparation call, definitely we can understand about the passion. Like
Yep.
what's something like that gets them really exciting to talk about, right? And then we can find an intersection between the passion, whom they serve, what problem they're trying to solve. So if you get an intersection between all this stuff, I think you can get some drafting a lot of good questions out there, and that is going to help you a lot in the final content. Exactly. I think the
Absolutely.
preparation calls are very important. So regarding the questions part, definitely we have to craft some engaging questions so that we are going to engage the clients as well, right? So in the context of creating the compelling content, so how do you design the questions so that not only draw out the knowledge but also evoke the passion and insights experts that you're interviewing? I think these questions are almost like related to a lot of stuff that you just talked for the last
Yeah.
question, right?
Yeah, exactly. You should come out of the prep call with a really clear sense of the questions that you're going to ask. And you can keep them to a minimum too. But now that you've already had a discussion, and you both understand and have have agreed that here's how we're going to approach this topic, then you don't need a long list of 10 questions to get at every little thing. You can
Mm,
treat the questions more as a guideline just to keep the
yeah.
conversation on course. And you can even basically ask the person in the prep call, what questions should I ask? Or it's more likely, as I mentioned before, to say, what are the top things that you want to talk about? Let's pick three or four that you want to make sure to hit on that really get right to the beating heart of this. And once you have those, you can turn them into questions. Just map the questions directly onto that. And you really only need three, four, maybe five questions to have a really substantial conversation. I
That's a
think
great idea.
one
It's a great
mistake
idea.
that people make sometimes is just to write down every possible question they can think of. And you end up with a list of like 20 questions, you know, and then you feel some pressure during the interview to get through all of them. Or even if you don't mean to get through all of them, still it can be confusing. Okay, do we talk about this one already? Or maybe the person answered questions three, four, and five. It's a lot to keep track of. You know?
True.
But if you do that prep, then you don't, like I said, you don't need a super long list of questions. You already know what you're going to talk about and why it's going to be awesome. You just need some basic questions to kind of guide you there. And of course, knowing that a really good conversation, a good interview will take on a life of its own, in that you'll end up asking some follow-up questions that are not on your list. I mean, another skill that an interviewer has to develop is anticipating where you might need or want to ask follow-up questions, um, and be able to think of that during the interview on the fly as the
Mm.
as the interviewee starts to get into something that maybe you weren't completely expecting, and you have to be able to judge in real time. Oh, okay, this is interesting. Are we getting off track here? Or is this just a different track that might be even better than what I thought was going to happen? But let's see. Let's let it spool out a little bit. And so now we're talking actually about the actual interview itself. But getting back to the questions, and I think, again, just the more you prepare and the better understanding you have of who you're talking to, what they really care about, and always the audience and what they care about, then writing the questions becomes pretty natural.
Yeah, I really like that approach. Instead of listing out a lot of questions out there, probably some three questions, we can have around some 30 minutes to 1 hour of content there. And from there, you can have a lot of snippets of content, short form content out there.
Yeah.
So that's a very good idea. I think from one question, you can really branch out to other questions, and probably the questions will flow naturally over there, and answers will come naturally from other side. So I think that's a really good idea. Okay. I know the storytelling can be a powerful tool in any content format, whether short form or long form, right? So, how do you integrate these narratives in your thought leadership interviews to make them resonate more deeply with the viewers?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're right. I think everyone would agree that storytelling, that's a good thing. Everybody likes stories, right? I'm a storyteller. We all have to do storytelling. What does that actually mean? I'm not sure. It can mean a lot of different things. I think in the context of an interview, I think there's a few ways to think about it. One is that you want the discussion that you have with this person to have some coherence. You can think of it
Mm,
like it's not just a bunch of questions I'm asking you and you're giving me answers that have nothing to do with each other, right? Kind of telling a story here in question and answer form, in like dialogue form, right? And again, that all goes back to the prep call. So you really understand, like, what's the bigger picture here? What's the theme? What's the thread that's holding all of this together? So that's one part of it. And then more practically, I think you can, if you want, and I think usually you do want to have the interviewee be ready to tell stories or anecdotes,
mm,
then let them know ahead of time during the prep call. Say, look, I'm going to ask you for, let's say, anecdotes or examples of what you're talking about, like real life examples from your experience. So prepare them a little bit and say,
good.
so it would be good if you take some time to just think about those, and have them ready to go. so that when I ask you for an example or an anecdote, you can tell that story. I really think
True.
it's as simple as that. You don't need to vet them. You don't need to know exactly what they're going to say, what the stories are. It's just, I think that's good because if you don't do that, and but you expect that to happen, then you might put someone on the spot. And if they haven't
Mhm.
thought about it, they might need to, "Oh, give me an example of that." They might be like, "Oh, okay, and stumble around a bit before they
Yeah,
can find a good example, or they might find an example that's pretty good, but really they had eight other stories they could have told that just didn't come to mind. So if you give
true.
them a heads up, they can come to the interview ready to share some really great anecdotes. And I think it's really as simple as that.
So true. As you said, for all this kind of stuff, whether the storytelling part or probably talking to the ideal clients, definitely this preparation calls helps a lot. Like a lot of things will be prepared, and then definitely we can be natural on the camera and deliver the content for the audience.
Yeah.
Regarding this post-interview process, I mean, like the once the interview is over, right? Once the interview is completed, so what steps that do you take in the post-production phase to enhance the content's value and impact for their audience? So, are there any specific editing techniques that you believe like is for the message? Because right now you can see a lot of short-form videos with a lot of
Mhm.
video editing elements coming on LinkedIn, and
Right.
best example is mine.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is, right, you've done the interview, now you have the raw material, and let's say you've recorded audio and video, right?
Yep.
So of course, I think it's kind of table stakes that you're going to want to do some level of editing. And
Mm,
that can mean different things, that and there are different schools of thought on this. Some people like to really go through with the audio, let's say, with a fine tooth comb and take out all the filler words, the ums, the uhs, the likes, the knows. And there's software now, like, and you and I both use Descript, right? It
yeah,
makes it a lot easier
it
than it
does.
used to be to take those things out. Some people like to leave a lot of that stuff in, on the idea that it's more natural. I fall somewhere in between, and it depends.
Mm,
If I'm talking with someone that every other word out of their mouth is or that's not a great listening experience or a viewing experience. So I want to take out at least some of that. So that's one part of it, just really basic stuff. The quality of the audio matters. I think the quality of the audio is paramount, even more so than the video. Of course, you want the video to look good as well with proper lighting, but you
yep.
can have awesome video, but if the audio sucks, it doesn't matter.
True.
It's unwatchable, it's unlistenable. So having making sure that you, the host, has a good enough microphone so you sound good, and who you're interviewing, usually you might not know or control exactly what they have. Yet another reason why a prep call is valuable, you can get a sense of, first of all, you should do the prep call using the platform you're going to use to record. So if it's
Mm,
Zoom, do it on Zoom. If it's Riverside, like we're using right now, do it in Riverside, so you can actually hear and see what they're going to sound and look like. And
yep.
I always ask before we record, do you have a microphone? Yes, I
Mm,
have a microphone. Okay, great. Do you have headphones or earbuds or something? Right? Because it's always better to use headphones than not. So you don't have to use echo cancellation, makes the audio better. If they
mm,
don't have a microphone, they don't have headphones or earbuds or whatever, then it might be fine. Maybe they're just talking into their computer. And nowadays, often these built-in microphones sound pretty good. They used to be horrible, but now a lot of times they sound okay. So you can at least gauge that. And my point here is that the best way to handle the post-production stuff is to make sure everything sounds and looks good going in. The less you have to do on the back end, the better it is. Not just for the time saving, but ultimately there's only so much you can do in post-production to make something look and sound good. The better it is going in. So the better the audio, the better the sound you capture, then you might just have to do little tweaks in post production and you're good to go. You can add a little sound sweetening, you can level out the volume. There's lots of automated AI stuff that just with a click of a switch, it'll sweeten up your audio. You don't have to bother with knowing all about compression and EQ. It does it for you. Unless if the audio is really bad, if it's
mm,
distorted, or there's just lots of noises and artifacts or background noise, you really need to know what you're doing. It maybe you can salvage that audio, but it's going to take a lot of time. You really need to be careful and know what you're doing, and it'll never sound great. It'll only sound, you can maybe get it to sound usable or okay, but you want to avoid that at all costs, right? And so, and it's really not that difficult. Just when you go to record, before you hit record, do a sound check. So, and just focus on the basic things where make sure that the volume level is good, not too soft, and especially not too loud. If it's distorting, then it's distorted. And there's very little you can do about that. And it's just not going to sound good. There's very little you can do in post production. So if you do a sound check and someone is way too loud, and the volume bar that you can see is like in the red, then simply ask them, okay, turn down your gain a little bit, right? Or move back from the microphone a little bit. So microphone placement is very important, right? And typically you want people to be like I am right now. And for those who are maybe listening to this, I'm about a fist length from the microphone. And that's because you want the mic to just pick up mostly what's right in front of it. So you don't want the
Right.
guest to be 2 or 3 feet away and it's picking up all the sound from the room and also the voice. Just you want the person to be right in front. But if for people who are not used to doing this, they might not remember that. And in the course of the conversation, when they're really into it, they might start moving all around. And so again, as the host, you want to instruct them, teach them how to use the microphone and to make sure their gain is in the right place and all those things. So nothing that's too complicated. But again, that is part of your job as the host slash producer. You cannot assume that the interviewee knows what they're doing. And in fact, they probably don't. And it's not their job to know. It's your job to instruct them.
Yeah, as we say all the time, the outputs always derive from the inputs, right? So if you
Yep.
don't have, I think a lot of things cannot be fixed in the post production. So if you take care of a lot of stuff, like if you prepare a lot on the pre production part, as you said, for the audio quality, the video quality part, the preparation call, a lot of stuff, right? So if you can take care of that part, definitely the post production will be much easier. That is so true because
Yeah.
I have experienced that when you interview the person. Like if you take care of that part, definitely the post production becomes a lot easier because there's a lot of limitation of the tools. I think even though he's saying like AI and limiting that editing that, right? You have to take care of the pre-production part, definitely yes. So what do you think about this evolution of thought leadership content as you see on LinkedIn and other social media? So the thing is that the digital world is all time evolving. So where do you
Yeah.
envision like the future of thought leadership content, especially the video part? So do you feel like any latest emerging trends or shifts that you are particularly enthusiastic about?
I think the big one, as everyone is well aware of, is the generative AI. You know? And it's hard to make it's hard to be super confident in making a prediction about exactly how that's going to impact the future of thought leadership content. Um, I think the one concern that I sense that a lot of people have is now that it is at least supposedly easier than ever with AI to churn out more content than ever, including thought leadership content. For example, it's not uncommon now to see ads or sort of marketing claims. Use our super special AI process to write an ebook in 3 days, or to write your thought leadership book in a week. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, it's hard to imagine that book would be very good, no matter what technology you're using. But that idea is out there. Oh, you no longer have to put as much thought into it or spend all that time writing a book and racking your brain. We'll just use AI and it'll make it super duper easy. Um, I very much disagree with that. Not that you can't do it, but that the quality will be anything that you'd actually want to publish. That's a whole other discussion. Um, but I think the point is that given that we're already seeing a lot of that kind of stuff, I think there's a pushback in that because there already is and is going to keep being just more and more content that calls itself thought leadership content out in the world, that in order to actually create thought leadership content that does anything, meaning that people actually pay attention to and appreciate, and after they read it, they think, wow, I've actually learned something. This is a company or person that I really want to know more about, or I want more of this. In order to get that outcome, I think it's already becoming more important than ever that you put even more effort into creating content that comes from you, that's not cookie cutter, that's not
Yeah.
relying mostly or even maybe really at all on AI. Uh, because inevitably, if you go down that route, you're going to just end up doing the same thing as a lot of other people. And it comes down to, what do we even mean when we talk about thought leadership content? You know, I interviewed a guy in my podcast who is specializes in thought leadership, like
Mhm.
training and in helping companies create thought leadership content. And he made a point that I think, like when I heard him say it, it seemed pretty obvious, but I hadn't quite thought about it that way before. And his point was that the best thought leadership content makes a strong argument. It has a
Mhm.
thesis and it supports that thesis, much like what you do like in college, like writing the thesis driven paper. But I think that's true. You know,
Mhm.
you have to, thought leadership content takes risks. You like plant your flag somewhere and you say, here's what I think. I'm going to set forth an idea here and I'm going to argue for it and I'm going to marshal evidence to support it. You, the audience, you can agree, you can disagree. In fact, great, let's have a discussion about this because I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, but I have ideas and I'm willing to take the time and make the effort to articulate those in a way that's not just regurgitating what's already out there, it's not just agreeing with things that everyone already knows. I'm taking maybe a contrary stance, or I'm pushing on an idea and saying, maybe there's more to this, or I actually think this is wrong and here's why. You know, that's the kind of content that I think people ultimately really respond to when it challenges you. That, of course, is the most difficult kind of thought leadership content to create. There are no shortcuts. There's no AI that can do it for you. And I would argue no AI that can even really help you at all, even
Mhm.
with an outline. You need to do that yourself. You need to really think through that if it's really going to be good. You need to seek out evidence. You need to educate yourself, right? I think there's no substitute for just putting in the hard work that takes, and that takes a long time. That's not something you can just crank out in a week or so. You know? And you also can't farm it out to, let's say, a marketing agency and say, "Oh,
Mhm.
write a thought leadership piece for me. You know, here are the ideas I want you to work with." Then it's not really you, is it?
Yeah.
It's somebody
True.
else. And maybe
Yeah.
you just read through and approve it or add in a few things. You know, and I'm sort of avoiding the word authenticity here because that's a
Yeah.
buzzword that gets thrown around, but there is something to that. You know, you want the, maybe organic is a better word, or something that is unique to you in the way that you think. And by you, we mean the CEO of a company, let's say, or anyone who's putting thought leadership out there. A lot of the value is that it's coming from like a singular mind, you know, and we all have singular minds. No two minds are exactly the same. So everyone has that capability, I think, to really articulate, here's what I really think and believe, and here's why, knowing that not everyone is going to agree. You don't want everyone to agree, right? That's, if everyone agrees, and it's not really thought leadership, is it?
Yeah.
It's just you're not challenging yourself and you're not challenging your audience enough. So, and again, I think there's that kind of stuff is takes a long time. It's hard to come up with the right ideas and the right arguments, and so it's not like you can just crank one out every week, you know. It's a bigger project. So I don't know if that's a trend exactly. That's just what I think, what I believe actual, like really true thought leadership content actually is. And it's rare. And it's rare because not just anyone can do it, or not just anyone is willing to put in the time to do it. So I'd like to see more of that. And I think inevitably, maybe we will, or because I think that's the stuff where you're going to get the return on your investment. That other stuff that you're just cranking out and calling it thought leadership, it's ultimately not going to do much. And so at a certain point, I think people will conclude, like, we're not sure why we're doing this anymore. It is literally has no value, you know? So
True.
I don't know. I'll stop talking. I've been going on and on, but that's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I love the way that you said that with a lot of conviction. See, if you have an AI, today I saw one of the YouTube videos. There they were saying, with 1 hour with ChatGPT and Canva, you can produce around some 500 YouTube shorts. And I've been detailed the videos, like something like robotic stuff. So it gives some prompts out there, and then after that, it fetches to Canva. Then yeah, it really fetches the content so fast. It's so true. But the thing is, as you said, the human element is definitely missing out there. And as you said, when you talk about thought leadership, definitely it should be about authenticity, and definitely you have to take a standpoint there. That is so important. uh, you're challenging something, right? Like the way it has been done in the industry, definitely you have to challenge it. Then only you have got your unique value proportion there. Then only you have got your, what do you call, the unique personality over there. Then only the people are going to notice you. So if you are going to for this robotic content, definitely that is not going to work. So absolutely, I 100% agree with you. So it was a great inputs from your end. I think I learned a lot. Like I was listening to you very keenly, the word by word that you said. I think it was so. I would say uh, thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming on the show and educating me.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
So I think we have come to the conclusion of this podcast. So if someone wants to, I think a founder or CEO of the IT industry or any other industry, so if they want to produce this thought leadership content in the way that you said, like they can come and talk with you for around some 1 hour or probably 2 hours, and they can find a lot of content, short form content. So how they can contact you? So can I include your LinkedIn profile with this YouTube video description? Is that fine? Is that
Yes,
the best way
please
to
do.
contact?
I'm LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. I'm on there probably too much, but I'm on there a lot. Our website is conversa.com. That's CONN, two N's, Versa. And I'm happy to share my email. It's just jeremy@conversa.com. So anyone who's watching or listening, if you're interested in just having a chat, even if you don't want to work with us, that's fine. Just want to have a chat. Just hit me up. Always happy to jump on a call.
Great, Jimmy. So thank you so much for being in the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.